Should the Silver Sword get nerfed? I talked about this in the video yesterday, and a lot of you guys were appalled that I would even suggest such a thing. And you better watch the entire video and hear all of the points that I have to say before you leave your "I grinded the entire Silver Sword so it shouldn't get nerfed" comment. But the fact of the matter is, the Silver Sword is a problem. It is objectively too strong and is the #1 weapon option in some cases. And this is a problem because it was only available for a limited time. And now that it is no longer possible to get this item, it creates a problem for competition. Let's take this hypothetical scenario. The best Dauntless player to ever exist starts playing tomorrow. We're talking a cosplay 2.0 here. He literally never makes any mistakes in his Dauntless trial runs and becomes #1 on the leaderboard every single week. And he deserves it. He's the most skilled player playing the game. But then a trial comes around in which the Silver Sword is metaphor. And it doesn't matter how much better his gameplay is, he can't make up the difference between the Silver Sword and the Frostwolf Sword. Even though he had the better gameplay and mechanics, he cannot be #1 because he just doesn't have the Silver Sword, because it was only available for a limited time. That creates an unfair competitive environment. But that scenario is a little extreme. Who cares if this guy is #1 every week? Let's take a much more realistic scenario here and talk about top 5s. Let's say the Charog trial comes around again and somebody decides they are going for top 5 for the first time. They use their trusty Frostwolf Sword, but all they're able to muster up is a 6th place placement, and they find out that everyone in the top 5 above them is running the Silver Sword. Try as they might, they simply cannot get the Frostwolf Sword to get into the top 5 over these Silver Sword gamers. They spend all of their free time on this, over 40 hours of their week, just clawing, trying to get into the top 5, and they just can't do it. The end of the week rolls around, and they are still number 6. Disheartened and feeling like they wasted their time trying to get good at this game, they don't ever attempt to go for top 5 in a Dauntless trial again. And a while after that, they quit the game, never getting this achievement that only a handful of people have ever gotten, even though over the course of their attempts, they were more than capable of getting a top 5 run there. But they never end up getting a top 5 only because they didn't have the Silver Sword. This scenario might seem too elaborate and extreme for some of you to think that this could actually happen, but newsflash, this already did happen to somebody. Not because of the Silver Sword, but because of cheaters. Somebody named SGA was trying to go all in on getting their top 5 on solo Shadow Touch Drask, I believe it was. And he ended up getting 6th place on that trial. And unfortunately for him, there were 3 cheaters on the leaderboard in the top 5 ahead of him. This was during a point in time where the devs were not deleting any times off of the leaderboard. They thought, these guys couldn't possibly be cheating. No, not in our game. It's impossible to cheat on Dauntless. Even though the times being achieved here were mathematically, you could literally prove that these were impossible times to get. But the devs never deleted those times from the leaderboard, and SGA was left SOL. And he was heartbroken by this. He spent a lot of time trying to get into the top 5 for the first time ever, and he literally couldn't because there were cheaters in front of him. And to my knowledge, he still literally never got his top 5 credited to him, even though the devs eventually had to end up banning those accounts that were in front of him in the first place. And with the Silver Sword now, if everything stays the same, it's only a matter of time before something like that happens. So the devs need to do something about that. They need to do something to make sure that the people who have the Silver Sword are not getting an advantage over people who don't have the Silver Sword. And the most likely scenario to happen is for them to nerf the Silver Sword as it is now. And in case you haven't kept up with the entire saga of the Silver Sword here and are saying that it shouldn't be nerfed, it's actually stronger than it should be in the first place. Their update notes on the website still say the Silver Sword should have Guardian and Warmth, not Guardian and Galvanized. And it should only be 100 max HP and not 300 max HP. And if they were to make the Silver Sword as it was in that update post, then it would be still the best option if you were not running tonics. It probably wouldn't be the best weapon period without tonics, but it would at least still be the best Frost Sword to run, so there would still be a use case for it. And even though it would be the most optimal choice to run there, it wouldn't be the end-all be-all #1 option in the game, because the Frostwolf Sword with tonics would still beat it. So guys, if they nerfed it to what it originally should have been in the first place, then it still would have been worth you grinding for. But should they nerf the Silver Sword? No. Again, I think it is the most likely thing to happen, but I don't think it is the best option here. Somebody suggested that they buff a different Frost Sword to bring it onto the level of the Silver Sword so that way people with the Silver Sword don't have an advantage. And while this would fix the problem, I guarantee this won't happen, because the most likely candidate here is buffing the Frostwolf Sword, or maybe the Scrave Sword, that would be interesting. But if it was the Frostwolf Sword, we already have the problem where people are saying the Frostwolf unique effect is just too strong when you are using the Aether Drive Tonic and Catalyst Catalyst, the Frostwolf unique effect wins on every weapon, except for sword now, with the silver sword being a thing, and the Molten Edict for hammer. In fact, the Frostwolf pike is so essential to group strategies right now, it's used on literally every single trial except for the Frost Behemoths. So buffing the Frostwolf unique effect is probably not the best option. Again, it would fix this issue, but it would just create another issue along with it. The best option would be for the devs to re-enable the Silver Sword quest permanently. It does defeat one of the original purposes of this quest line in the first place, was to have a exclusive weapon that you could only get for a limited time. But they accidentally made it too strong, and that means you have to have it in order to have a even playing field in the competition. But re-enabling the quest and maybe just taking away the Frostfall crown as a reward for that last level is the best option here, because there are quite a few of you guys actually who have expressed that because you put in all of that time to grind your Silver Sword to the max, if it gets nerfed, then you're actually just gonna uninstall the game permanently. And I can kind of understand that viewpoint, especially those of you who were really early into the game when this event started, and it takes you several hours to complete one reforge. But if they make this quest available all the time, does that mean that you grinding it out in the first few weeks was pointless? No, because at the end of the day, you still got one of the best weapons in the game by completing that quest. There is another option to this that would solve the problem, but not in a good way at all, and that would be to continuously renew these limited time quests and power creep them each time. So eventually there's another Frost Sword that ends up coming out that is a limited time quest that gets better than the Silver Sword. But this is a bad idea because A, it's going to take a ton of resources to continue doing that, and B, if you continue power creeping things to that degree, you're just going to end up one-shotting things with every weapon, even a light attack from chain blades. So ideally, they just avoid that kind of a headache, and they avoid the headache that nerfing the Silver Sword would cause, and just re-enable the quest permanently. But it's possible they just won't want to do this and keep it not available for a period of time, because again, we do actually already have precedent with that sort of thing happening with the Skull Forge. For those that aren't aware, there was a period of time where you could not get any of the exotic items, including the Skull Forge. But the Skull Forge and all of the other exotic items did exist and were in the inventories of the people who had gotten them when they were available. And this was a problem because the Skull Forge was the meta for the Malkarian Dauntless Trials. You used to be able to use the Skull Forge's stamina shield to indefinitely stay mounted on behemoths. And funnily enough, this is the only time where chain blades actually out DPS every other weapon. But they removed the ability to get the Skull Forge with the Reforge update, I believe, and the problem with that was it was still going to be the meta option for the Malkarian Dauntless trial. And if they didn't do something, the entire top 100 of this trial would have been just people who had the Skull Forge who were able to get it before it was removed. For both solos and squads, the entire leaderboard would not have been accessible for somebody who started the game after the Reforge update came out. So what the devs did was they made it so you don't gain stamina shield when mounted with the Skull Forge, rather than the alternative option of making it available in some other way. So we do have the precedent of them nerfing something that was no longer available because it was too strong. So I do think that nerfing the Silver Sword is the most likely scenario to have happen, even though I don't think it's the best option. The best option would be to re-enable the quest. And thinking of those of you who did grind this quest out, I will try to convince the devs that they should just re-enable this quest as opposed to nerfing the Silver Sword, but the fact of the matter remains that they have to do something about it because it is a problem. And to those of you who heard me out, listened to all of my points, and watched till this point in the video to hear me say that, then congratulations! We all now get to clown on the people in the comments who didn't watch until this point in the video and left their angry, hate-filled message. Just give them a reply. Clown emoji, didn't watch until 8:03. And if you're here, you might as well just comment that anyway. You know, clown emoji, if you didn't watch until 8:03. And if you are someone who got clown emoji'd, I'm sorry, man. I did warn you at the beginning of the video to watch till the end of the video before leaving your angry, hate-filled comment. So, you know, clown. But anyways, guys, that is going to be it for this one. Like, subscribe, comment, do the algorithm stuff. I have been Trevor, I go by TheMrTrails, and I will catch you guys next time.